Today we're gonna discover new things, but we also could discover and talk about old things or old ways of doing things. We're gonna talk about the TimeAeon Foundation. We definitely gonna talk about you, what brought you there. Philippe. It's amazing to sit right next to you. Now, no. Afterwards, we're going to talk about this. How many Grand Prix d'Horlogerie prizes do we unite here on this podium? How many can you throw in?
Maybe, perhaps 4 or 5.
4 or 5, okay.
Yeah.
3.
1.
1.
Yeah.
You know,
not for the watch, but for the.
So we're almost at 10. We're almost at 10.
Yeah.
But very often the prophet at home is recognized the last. That's what we say in Swiss German. A prophet at his own place is recognized the last. And your fame started in other places. But my first question to you is, why with the TimeAeon Foundation, why are you consecrating so much time, effort and money in keeping old ways of doing things alive? Why aren't you looking forward and say it's all about innovation? Why is it about conserving old ways?
Yeah. It's a big question, but I would say why keeping this old method of working? It's my opinion, it's the only chance we have to survive in Switzerland. Mm-hmm. Because the technology is worldwide today. We cannot say we have this and the other people don't have now. I mean, technology is similar everywhere. Mm-hmm. So we are condemned to use this modern technology, and the component coming out of one of these machines, but it's not especially for watches. You can make rollers or bicycles, the same thing. Mm-hmm. If you just use a component like it come out of the machine, sooner or later you're in trouble, because you're no more competitive in terms of price. The cost of the labor in Switzerland is very high. So you have to use this technology, but the component coming out of one of these machines, you have to add something, an added value by your head and your hands, to put our culture in it. And if we don't do that, in 10, 15 years we are gone. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's why what we are trying to carry and to transmit with the TimeAeon Foundation, it's all this know-how, our culture, it's our value for the Swiss watchmaking.
And is it possible to somehow combine the two, innovation and preservation of the old?
Of course. I mean, it's no. You can make something. I don't know, a product with a brand new system. Well done. You know what I mean? You can mix a new thing, a new method, new material, and a nice finished product. Of course. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But you started with your career. Kind of started. The big bang was the Grande Sonnerie.
Yes.
And then you went back, or maybe you went forward, and went to simplicity.
Yeah.
It started very complicated and ended very simple.
Because it was my way to say, I'm here, I exist, you know?
The Grande Sonnerie.
Yes, because if you make, I don't know, a simple watch or a better calendar, nobody knows, okay? As I want to. And since the first product, the first caliber, we call, I trace a line. The product has to be done this way. The finishing has to be done this way. My way of perpetuating the nice way of making watches from my era Vallée de Joux. That was my red line. And at that time, people were laughing at me. They say, wow, come on, don't play with that anymore. We don't bevel by hand with a machine doing that, blah, blah, blah. I said, no, it's my way, I do it. And 25 years later, I realized I was right. Because the market evaluate, the knowledge people evaluate, and now they can appreciate the difference between this or this, you know. And today, I told you before, my watches are arriving in the auction with 5 times the price. And
900 last simplicity at the auction, 900,000.
It was the duality, yes. Yeah. Somebody told me, people are waiting till you are dead. Because the price will increase again.
Well, let's hope that's still gonna take a while.
Yeah.
You didn't start with simplicity, Stephen, but you kind of started the other way around. It's not that simple to do an inclined tourbillon, but last year you launched the consonnerie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that by accident that it went the other way around than with Philippe?
Yes and no. I think thanks for being here at the Espace Connaisseur. It's great. And for Robert and myself, it was a little bit different. We had a basis of experience in watchmaking, but together we realized we wanted to create something different, and we had our own ideas, and we saw that in a similar way, I think, to Philippe, but we didn't know each other very well then, but we saw that there were several things which were missing. We were looking at a new millennium, and so a particular subject was the tourbillon. And so we decided to see if we could improve the tourbillon for the wristwatch. So it was a fresh approach. Philippe has explained when he started, which was a few years before, 10, 15 years before.
Quite a few, yeah.
Yeah. So he was in a completely desert place, It was really the start of the renaissance of interest in mechanical watchmaking. When Robert and I started in the late 90s, there was already a certain momentum, but that's when we could see that there was this void which was growing in terms of the gap between traditional watchmaking and hand finishing, and the market and the collectors, and there was a sort of a rift opening up for us. So for us, we said, okay, we have ideas for the tourbillon we want to develop technically, but we want to practice and display and try and get back some of the best of hand finishing. And you see, I think why? Well, the history of mechanical watchmaking is 500 years strong, and so one of the questions is it with us that it should die? Should we be the ones to give up? And clearly, if we're here today,
the answer was no.
Well, if we're here today, so far, it's still very early for TimeAeon Foundation, for the initiative, but we start to get support, and we're trying to bring people together, say, look, it doesn't actually belong to us. It's an immaterial heritage which is very present still in Switzerland. We can save it, but we need more help, and we need people to pay attention to that, because if you don't have that basis of how to do hand finishing, how to make some components, maybe not to make a whole watch, but at least a basis, you need a foundation. You can't build a house with no foundations.
But it seems an incredibly large ocean where you're dropping your stones in. It seems to me like you're creating little circles, and they're gonna get bigger. Naissance d'une montre is one circle. Oscillon now is another circle. Michel Boulanger teaching about traditional watchmaking is another circle. It's a big ocean where you're dropping your stones in.
But with Philippe, you see, with Vianney, we had to start somewhere. It was towards the end of Basel Fair, 2005 probably. Yeah. There were less meetings. We were standing outside our little stand and talking to Philippe. We were saying, how's it going? Oh, it's difficult to find people with skills, with young people with motivation and a basis to build on, and there's a side of the practical skill, but there's also a state of mind with that, and to have this passion and to be able to practice and to be able to pursue that. And you need a certain amount of resistance to go through this phase. So at the beginning we created the foundation. We were 5, and we thought that we would be able to get support from bigger groups. We thought they must be concerned about the future.
Was not
but
the case.
finally, it did not happen. After 18 months, it was with Robert Greubel and Philippe and talking, and Robert and then together with myself, and we said, well, we have to start somewhere. And so this was with Philippe. Philippe said he was prepared to share his know-how. We thought, well, we have in our team at Greubel Forsey Complete Time a certain basis and people with different skills. And then it was to find a candidate. And so we found Michel, who we knew already, and talking then with Philippe, did Philippe think he could complete the project? Because it was, you know, it's like it was one stone we had to drop.
And only
we
one.
Have any more. So if that stone fell in and there was no
reaction, you wouldn't.
We would have been in trouble.
But the stone fell in.
The stone fell in, and slowly, but it took much longer than we hoped, because this was 2009, 2010. In SIHH 2012, we reserved a small space in our booth for TimeAeon Foundation, but it was mostly Naissance du Monde, Philippe and Michel showing some techniques. 2013, 2014, Michel had made the first tourbillon cage, so we were starting to make progress, but still there was very little feedback. And it was only 2015 when Michel had the first movement in a case, not decorated but running, and suddenly there was a bit of a eureka moment, and people started to say, hang on, there is a subject here, there is some substance here, I think.
Yeah, right. But I think I personally was expecting more interest from big brands.
Yeah,
because they all talk about the know-how, about the tradition and all that, but I thought they were going to support.
To jump on the wagon much quicker.
Exactly.
Did they jump on when the school watch, the La Montre École, sold in Hong Kong for 1.5 million?
The only interest we had was Chrissy, who became partner, and different retailers around the world who are selling the 11 watches. That's it. But I mean, big brands, nothing.
The Fondation Horlogerie for SIHH
supported it.
Gave us a space which is support us.
We were a little bit surprised. Because I can understand the first year when we were playing with a bow and things like that.
They thought, these guys gotta be mad. They gotta be mad.
They were laughing at us.
But then it was then we discovered with Felix and Martin that from Urwerk they had their own project, and
that's what interested me, because Martin, you're together with me the only non watchmaker here. You're the designer and co-founder of Urwerk. You're making watches.
No,
where are you kicking into the project?
We talked before about the tradition and the importance to keep the tradition alive. But you could say part of this tradition since the beginning of watchmaking, I'm sure, is inventiveness, and is also asking that before, can one do like novel, create new things? And the watchmakers are always creating new things. Like it doesn't really matter that much of how it looks, but the inventiveness starts not with the case, starts with what's inside, obviously. And you have to have this mindset of this inventive person that like a Galileo Galilei, let's say, Kepler, or these kind of people started with this way of looking at the world, combining, the way our planets work together, and somehow reading time and have this model of this universe inside of this object. Of course, it was first a bigger clock, or maybe a clock on top of a tower, of a church tower, and so on. But it finds its way into this strange object that measures time. And for us, of course, you have to have the mindset of this inventive person. You have to have the mindset of a watchmaker to understand how to do these things right. And for us with Urwerk, this is of course also important, as important. Our engineers, and our watchmakers, they have to, of course, know exactly how that's done. And then this other traditional value comes into place, and that's inventiveness. And there, it goes together. When I studied art, and it's a different field, but there as well, you learn to draw first. You do all the traditional techniques, and that's the base on what everything else can stand.
Can develop.
We see it a lot, even around us in the world. I think it was in the USA. They were going to stop. The children did not need to write anymore. So we
Something
humans,
gets lost.
we're all about a brain, a mind to hand connection. This is a communication and our skill to create, to fashion objects and to be able to create things. This is a fundamental foundation of us as human beings, and so the side of watchmaking is something where we have found for Greubel Forsey and our smaller adventure an incredible network of other people, passionate watchmakers or collectors or media or just people who discover or are curious, and it's an incredible worldwide family in a way.
Small, but it is worldwide.
And if we are here today and with the support of Les Ambassadeurs and friends, then it means that people care, and it means something to them. The added value, as Philippe said, you can machine a fantastically made micro dimension components today. You can we've seen a movement can be built with only one screw and without any human hand, and that's fantastic technology. But it is a different category from what we are trying to talk about today, and not the one can't exist without the other. But what we want to do is we want to say, look, in 20, 30, 50 years, who is going to be able to service, to restore, to curate and look after collections of the beautiful timepieces? They were built to run, to measure time, to show complications, to strike the time or whatever, and we need to make sure that we pass on this knowledge.
It's gonna go on.
Philippe had a famous quote for that about the knowledge where it's all full of, the cemetery is full of secrets.
Best kept secrets.
Yeah.
Best kept secrets. I put this in the middle. You know this very well. You gave me that model a couple of years ago.
For our
and it's always in my office. I always see it, and I put that in the middle here because I found that it's kind of, for my understanding, a good symbol of what you at the TimeAeon Foundation are doing. What, for example, Océan is doing, because when I talked to Océan, they said they're doing everything the way it would have been done if there's no computer. And this is, if I remember right, this is the model, how you did the first model of your first tourbillon to construct, to kind of check the feasibility, doability of what you had in mind.
Are you visualize it in three dimensions?
Are you working like that as well, or how do you develop a movement?
Well, already some sketches, and if I take the duality, for example, I made a prototype, very simple prototype, something 90 degrees, one barrel, train wheel, and two escapement, two balances, to test the system and to understand the system, because my brain is not smart enough to understand it straight away. So you have to do it in real to understand the way it works.
No computer.
Yeah, the drawing I use, but at that time it was 2 dimension only, and I can show you later. I have a drawing in color, but I didn't know how to use the color, so I painted myself. The 3D explode view of the system. Yeah. Now a computer is a great help.
But it's I think you'd agree, Philippe, it's a tool.
It's a tool, yeah.
See, but it's only as good as what you can put in.
One doesn't exclude the other.
No.
If you don't know what to put in, it's an electronic drawing board for I think for us. So
Yes.
The strange thing with the computer is that you have, and I work together with an architect in the same space. And so he has on his computer screen, he has bigger objects, obviously, but on the same screen. And then watches, there are small objects, but you have them, you go into it, and so it can happen to you.
And it's blown up big.
Exactly. So when you're inside there, you know, the perfect world, you're standing on top of a wheel, let's say, and everything is in a nice lighting, you know. So you have to be careful that
you're losing the perspective.
So what is very important in making models, using other materials, so let's say that
different
model.
technique.
So you have to also see it in real, you know, not only in a computer, because that is immaterial. So you have to have it also for let's say cases or so. It's good to have that first in the real. In the model. That's also why with Urwerk, for instance, what we like is if the first watches are not yet polished already in the computer, polished, you know, to the last detail. You want to have the first watch more like a prototype, you know, so then you see it in real, and there you can somehow discover it, so that it becomes an object that is made in reality as a piece of sculpture.
It's more than 20 years ago now. It seems unreal. I did my apprenticeship as a goldsmith. And I was lucky enough to do it in a very old-fashioned and very traditional workshop back then, and we did everything by hand. And the more I discovered about the TimeAeon Foundation, the more it felt to me, in many ways, it's a similar way of thinking, despite the fact that you guys are working sometimes 1,000 times more precise than we do as a goldsmith. And what I did is I went down to my workshop, and I dug out some tools, which are goldsmithing tools, but probably back then somehow started at the same place. And I just want to place them here. And I'm very curious. What should I pick? Well, this is for measuring, and I know you guys are much more precise than the goldsmiths are. And I just want to place them here and ask all three of you to pick one and to kind of say, is there anything similar in watchmaking, the way the TimeAeon Foundation is pursuing it, or is it something completely different, or are there other tools? That would interest me. Philippe, you want to start?
Yeah, I would say the file, but smaller one probably. But the file, we use the file in different, operation for the finishing, for the beveling and everything. So
never a file that size.
No, maybe to start with a block of metal, but you know, not.
What size is the smallest?
What the size of the file?
Your smallest file is.
Oh.
About this long. The part that cuts is maybe
very fine.
3, 4 centimeters.
And the
super fine.
Super fine,
It's actually a very interesting tool. When I just think about it now, it's incredible, the file, actually, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it looks like such a simple, basic thing. But you can do such incredible things with the file.
You can really mold out of the massive. You can work something out and give it a three-dimensional form. You can transform it, and I think it's fascinating to create. We were talking about creating something. You really can create something new out of a new thing. For you, I should have brought a pencil, huh?
For sure, but in general, I mean, what we use tools, human beings. I mean, we use this. You can have more and more complex tools. In the end, a CNC machine is a tool too. There you have to also wrap your mind around it. And I see people working with CNC machines, the way they have to, of course, know all these tools. They have to start with this. That they cannot, know what it's doing, what it's going to do inside that box. But tools are super interesting, actually, that the human beings understood how to see. Okay, we have our fingers, and from that we create something that we can do things that fingers can't do. So it's fascinating to me. And as an artist, obviously, you work with the material. I studied arts. I studied sculpting, and there you work with the bile, with the axe, or it's very basic stuff like this. And you have to look, and you have to obviously know what's inside that piece that you want to dig out of that.
But it's very primitive tools in a way.
Yeah,
Primitive, but you have a concept, you have an idea of what you want to make, and the tool just extends your hands, and your mind, basically, and helps you to shape it. And that really, it doesn't matter what kind of tool it is, but we all need it, and it's beautiful. It's like it extends us, our bodies.
So, well, I mean, of course, the hammer is a very useful tool for watchmaking.
Especially if it doesn't work.
It's a question of dimension,
I didn't want to bring a too large hammer, it would have shocked you.
Yeah, it might have done a
Because
bit.
goldsmithing comes from smith.
But actually,
The first watchmakers were smiths. Huh?
So they came from blacksmith.
Yeah.
From the metal worker. But of course, this is a saw. So this is a tool which many watchmakers to learn to use this at the beginning. It was something I was lucky enough a little bit over 30 years ago to still be able to do some of that in the school I was at, to actually use that and to learn how to drive the saw itself and how to cut the metal. But I think one of the things also with the initiative of TimeAeon is to also show that you don't necessarily need huge sophisticated equipment. You can actually do a great deal of things with very simple tools, and as Philippe said himself, just from a bow, you can with a bow to drive, and with turning between two centers. So you have the arbor or the pinion with 2 points, and to actually just turn between centers, you can do a huge amount. You don't necessarily need a fantastic high precision lathe or
But you have to have the knowledge of
Yes,
how to use it.
Yeah. But the knowledge you can get two ways. What we try to do with the workshops that Michel is doing now. He's lived through the Naissance du Monde project and survived, which is
which is incredible.
Which is why he's got the right stature for it, But one of the things is Michel is able to do. He can't train in the time of these short workshops, but he can demonstrate and get the watchmakers and the student to try a few different techniques to show them, that you have to try. You have to try. And this is the thing where, again, talking to Philippe, I'm sure Martin, as well, that you need a perseverance with this. It's good to have a passion and to have that flame in the eyes, that you're excited about your subject, whatever it is. But in the case of watchmaking, you need a resistance to checkmate, And so the first part doesn't work, you take another piece of metal, you start again. If you give up after the first one, it's probably not the right subject.
Just keep doing.
Eventually, the second, third piece in the beginning can get better. It gets better, and then you start to build on that. With Michel, we made a little bit over a month ago in Mexico at the CR exhibition. Which is, we made a second workshop for TimeAeon in Naissance du Monde around these subjects, and two of the watchmakers this year came back for the second time for 3 days, and that's fantastic. Mexico City doesn't have an official proper watchmaking school anymore. So you can see how serious, and yet it's a market, a region where they love beautiful watches, fine watchmaking, complicated watches. But these two watchmakers came back again, and Michel could see, there was already a step. They'd already, even though they'd spent 3 days last year, the second round of 3 days, they'd hooked, to the subject. So it's that also. And it's a great, thank you, because it's a great idea. You can do a lot already with this.
Believe me, for me it was great because I haven't took them out the drawer for quite a while, and it was there's great memories with these really simple tools.
Maybe
there's great memories combined with that.
Next time you can bring us a piece of work.
I'd love to. Now I would like to open up the circle a little bit and give you the chance to ask whatever questions there are. This might come as a surprise, this might not. if you have a question, this is the time to ask it. And having three legends up here on stage, don't miss out on the opportunity, I'd say. Not everyone at once.
Well, maybe while they think, Joachim, I mean, for Naissance du Monde, Les Ambassadeurs has also been an important contribution. What brought you to the, if I can ask, what brought you to the subject? What really tilted it for Les Ambassadeurs?
Well, for us, it was really you. It was really you at one of the SIHHs. You approached us about the project, and honestly speaking, I wasn't aware of it. I wasn't aware. Like you said, you know, there's stones dropped in the ocean, and sometimes you miss a circle, and sometimes you don't. Or there's big waves, and the small waves, you don't really recognize them, even though they're very, very important. Sometimes the small ripples are more important. You talked about it to me, and honestly, in the beginning, like you said, I didn't understand what it was all about. And of course, SIHH, you have other things on your mind. You see, first of all, you see beautiful products, but you're also spending lots of money, and you're taking big risks and big bets on the future, and you're thinking about your clients, what might like. Then I went back to Les Ambassadeurs and talked to some of my colleagues about the project. And the idea started to appeal on me, and probably also the fact that I'm coming myself from craftsmanship, and the fact that I had the opportunity of spending a nice portion of my life in quite an old-fashioned workshop where my boss always said, you know, casting is the devil. At our place, everything is done by hand. This probably made more of a mark on my thinking that I might be aware of, and I just grew fond of the idea that with Michel Boulanger, and then later on I was at one of your meetings in La Chaux-de-Fonds, where Michel Boulanger also talked about the project. And on top of it, it was not just a great idea, but it was also a great person who was there. The pupil that you chose was just a fascinating person that kind of transported that enthusiasm for doing things a way where at first glance you think they gotta be mad. You know, honestly, you guys gotta be mad to do the things you are. Just before you told me if someone wants to work for you, you tell them you have the reputation of having quite a big of turnover of people working in your workshop, because you're demanding. Your level of what you're demanding is so high, and you saying to them that if they want to work for you, they have to be prepared to forget about weekends, forget about evenings, forget about free time, and this shows no matter is it sport, is it work, is it art, is it creating something, it's always about passion and really diving into it, and that's only when you get good. Just the other night we were talking about the book where it's a very popular way of looking at it. You have to spend at least 10,000 hours at something to get better at it. And sometimes this something might be just how you do a wheel. And we at Les Ambassadeurs, we are fortunate enough to represent some amazing high-end brands, some amazing niche brands like yours and yours. You never wanted to give me a watch, but
sorry.
You will be. We're fortunate enough to sell these pieces, and I think as Les Ambassadeurs, it's also part of our responsibility to give a little bit back to that. And I just grew fond of the idea. You probably dropped a stone in my brain as well, and it took a while to create the circle, and I understood that this is what we got to do. My first question, if it is really necessary, was more meant as a provocative start into that little round. Since these guys don't have any questions, do we have any time left?
15 minutes.
15 minutes. Wow.
6 o'clock.
You want to have a smoke?
Yeah, I can have a smoke.
Well, it's not going to be 15 minutes, but because we have to round up afterwards. But what really interests me is we have young watchmakers in our workshops. You train young people. There's young people like Cyrano, like Bernard, who dream of something new. Now you started as Philippe Dufour years and years ago. You said it was an empty field. That could be positive, that could be negative. Is it more difficult or is it easier for a young watchmaker who is dreaming of creating his own brand, doing something really new and amazing? Is it more difficult for him today than it used to be for you?
No, I think it should be more easy. Why? It's because today the market, the consumer, the collectors are much more educated. When I realized in '92, the first time I went to Singapore with my grandson Ray, I spent 2 years and a half with that alone. They look at me and say, yeah, you're like everybody else. You know, they used to sell very expensive watches with just small booklets from the factory. No knowledge on the salespeople, on the consumer. No, it's expensive. Okay, today is different. Why? It's because some magazine made a nice job.
Big difference.
And also internet, the forum, the discussion, and the exchange pictures, macro pictures, showing different between that and that. So today the consumer, the collector is educated. The problem is sometimes even more educated than the salespeople. You know, okay, when you arrive in the shop, may I see that watch? You put the watch on a tray. Take the watch. What he's doing? Taking the loop. He's saying to the salesman, "Tell me it's unfinished." No, we can see it's all vibrated. And the screw are not so good. I saw some better ones. So today, I think for young people who really has the guts and willing to do something, the market, I would say, is more easy. Because people can recognize much more than when I started.
But they're also more demanding.
Yes, because
their knowledge is much bigger.
Yeah.
The market is there, but you have to you really have to create something unique. You agree on that, or you?
Yeah, I think I think probably for some of the independents now who started maybe with Felix and Martin, the first years were also really tough. Maybe we arrived a bit later.
In general, when you start, I don't know, there's maybe sometimes there's times that support you in doing something, in creating something new, better, that can be. But I think in general, if you start something new, then it's tough, and that's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
You don't expect it to be an easy thing, otherwise you don't do it. But you don't really feel it because you're doing it, and that's what you want to do. So you go for it. You don't really, oh no, it's hard.
But the collectors are there, the people who appreciate the work are there.
But there's much more competition as well.
Of course.
So the information, you can get the information out there. There are people who understand, but there's a lot of competitivity, and there's a lot more, even more offer than there was of different things. And, as Philippe says today, the collector can learn more quickly. There is a database of the internet and forums where it's much more open to learn.
So every time is unique, that's also something I think very important to understand. So if you do something now, that's contemporary watchmaking. You do it now, and therefore you create something that fits into these times. And 200 years before, even though maybe the techniques were similar, but you did it differently. So every time allows you to do it differently. So if somebody starts, you will definitely do it differently than we did it.
Then you did,
So it's a new chance, and that's something in general very good for us to understand, that every time it doesn't really matter what the circumstances are, but it offers you kind of a new chance and new possibilities.
I would say something about young people who is willing to start something today. People are searching for traceability. They want to understand who made that and how. And with a young watchmaker, for example, the consumer, he has all the information. Okay, and this traceability, very often you don't get it in big brands.
You have to be authentic today.
Yes, it's
Cannot cheat
authenticity,
anymore.
credibility. Definitely.
Yeah.
The collector wants to know the story behind it, what's new, what's different.
Wants to see it, wants to
how-
prove that it's
Yes,
really not just a marketing.
Yes, and
Yeah.
it's not specialized on watches. In the food, it's the same thing.
Same thing.
You know, maybe I would prefer to say I eat beef or meat only once a week, but I want to know where it comes from. I go to this farmer, I know he's raising this type of animal, and sometimes I have a nice steak.
In a certain way.
For cheese, for the same thing. And more people who can afford, they are searching to understand.
To understand.
I think.
I think this is a very, very good, let's say, word to finish. I get the feeling that Philippe is getting hungry, so we're gonna skip. We're gonna move on to the next thing. When Philippe starts talking about food, it's probably time to go and either smoke something, something, or eat something.
Okay.
So. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for spending time with us.
You're welcome.
You all gonna have now the opportunity, since you didn't want to ask your smart questions in public, to ask them now one-to-one. Thank you, Philippe. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.